adopts a certain decision, first based on the progress and meeting the criteria, and secondly, given all the geopolitical concerns and the outcomes of the current negotiations with adversaries.
Right. Now, Josep Borrell was on a recent visit to Ukraine, and he proposed a EU military and advisory training mission to Ukraine. Would this be a good response by the EU to the tensions in the East?
Well, I guess that any involvement of the European Union institutions or countries or NATO countries which gives an impetus to certain reforms and transfers know-how is a positive involvement, and then we should anticipate better results. So should the results come because of the higher and better engagement from the EU side and NATO side, so I guess that's the political synergy that we all need.
Yeah, that's true. Now, what do you think about, moving gears completely, what do you think about the French proposal for collective European defense? Is that a pipe dream?
The French proposal, in my opinion, is not something new, since the French have always been advocating a certain strategic or military autonomy in certain areas. Well, everybody reckons that the US and the NATO is the platform for the security for all member states, but the French every now and again think that European Union countries within the military domain could exert certain efforts and launch certain actions in the areas which would be both compatible with the NATO mission, but also give the autonomy for actions if not all the NATO member states like Canada or the US wanted to get involved. So I guess that certain strategic autonomy would lead the willing European Union countries to certain actions which would not be adverse to the NATO values and principles, but also give a value added in a certain action in certain chosen consensus areas where EU should act, and how should back those actions in certain military areas elsewhere.
Right, okay. But could that be putting the cart in front of the horse in a way? Wouldn't Europe need to further political integration to effectively act on common defense force that could actually be decisive? I guess another way to say that, are European interests too divergent in some of these security issues? I mean, even in the situation that we see in the East.
Well, I wouldn't say so, since we have a high number of the European Union member states which advocate for tighter relations with the United States, and the countries in the Baltic Europe, in Central Europe, and in Northern Europe, they tend to rely more on the US in the provision of security within the NATO framework, and rely on the US as the leading country for security delivery, rather than relying on a separate European security arrangement. And of course, simultaneously, there are countries which would seek more strategic autonomy than looking at France as the leading country in this initiative. So in summation, we don't have a unified European Union approach which would differ, from the United States, or which would put, European Union with its military ideas on the one hand and the United States on the other. So to say that there are quite a few countries within the European Union that would rather stick with the United States in terms of security rather than with the European Union.
Right. Okay. So, so do you think but do you think that decisions would be able to effectively be made regarding those? Would it look like a coalition of the willing amongst European nations? Those who want to participate in such actions would do so, and those who would not would opt out?
Well, it's hard to say, without seeing a concrete plan, on the table, we can only speculate. And given the idea of different speed in terms of integration, which I see as a increased interdependence, so military field could be perhaps one of them. But again, I would say that many countries, especially in the Baltic Europe, would say that a separate EU-relying military field should be compatible and not contradicting the NATO mission and should give a certain value added. If that argument is not followed, then I would not see a very broad coalition of the willing.
Okay. Okay, well, staying on EU integration, if we will, is Lithuania keen to have deeper political integration in Europe? We've seen that the new German chancellor, well, he wants to deepen European integration. Is Lithuania keen on, say, deeper integration or federalization of Europe?
Well, it depends, what's for the offer. Since I consider that Lithuania has been a proponent of deeper integration in terms of increased welfare or increased importance of a small